All right, we go from one all-star, borderline all-star, right, to another borderline all-star. The all-star selections just came out for the media, and he just got in by a fan vote. Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you.
John Canzano, johncanzano.com, host of the Bald Face Truth down there in Portland, Oregon, and Portland voted him in. A surprise 95% approval rating that John gets down there in Portland, Oregon.
Low turnout.
Well, there was 3 people, and they all live in your house. JohnCanzano.com is the website. He joins us here every single Tuesday on Puck Sports. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. 95%, 3 voters. I need to talk to your math teacher.
Yeah, well, that's why I was a comm major. All right.
I know.
Leave me alone.
I get the metaphor. I get it.
Yeah. Did you blow things up on the 4th?
I did. I put on a show. I am the master of ceremonies.
You are.
I wanted the kids. I gathered the neighborhood kids. I spent way too much on fireworks at the local fireworks tent. I just kept going over there, Puck, and I kept going. Every time I went in there, it was like $100. I would walk out, and pretty soon I was looking around, going, "I can't tell people about this." So I need your viewers to just keep this between us, okay? I went overboard with the fireworks, but the neighborhood kids came up to me afterwards. They just had smiles on their faces, man, and we lit it up. So we did a good thing. But the kids are all like 7, 8, 9, 10. It's the perfect age.
Sure.
Easy to impress.
It's Roman candles, always my favorite.
Yeah. What I did is I went big with like the sparkler type kids,
Sure.
Get your hands on things,
Yeah.
Put your eye out kind of stuff. And then we did nothing in the middle. The whole middle thing where it's the little things, we didn't do that. Then I went for finale stuff. I just had like 7 or 8 finale type things. And you know what? It worked. The kids were wowed.
Good. Did we mix in a tank?
Yes, I had a tank.
And the tank never works, though. Did it work for you?
No, it fell over. It's caught on fire. Looked like one of these tanks from a third world country. It was just not a real good thing.
Are we still taking bottle rockets and shooting them at people? Did we have any of that?
No bottle rockets. I'm not doing anything that I'm not gonna. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want to maim anybody.
Well, of course,
Yeah.
You don't want to hurt anybody.
But my 9-year-old daughter came up to me afterwards because what I was doing, Puck, is like I laid them out and then I would go light them, and while one's going off, I'm lighting another, right? Because I'm keeping this going. The whole show went an hour. That's how many fireworks I had. Okay.
Good God. Did you have music too?
Yeah,
we had some music.
We had a boombox playing. I requested "The Greatest Showman" as the first song.
Yeah.
And so my 9-year-old came up to me after and hugged me, and she said, "Dad, you're so brave." Yeah. I was like, "Oh, that got me. I'll never forget that."
What was the finale?
I just lit a bunch of them on fire at the same time, and we got cleared out of there.
John Rocket Man? I mean,
I have a photo of the cul-de-sac. It looks like it's noon. That's how lit up it is.
I love it. It's a great time of year. It's just the one time of year, just blow stuff up and just laugh and giggle about it. All right. Hey, what's this latest? I can't make a transition. That's why I'll say, meanwhile, or whatever we came up with our transition last week. Memphis, what's going on with the Memphis Tigers?
Okay, so Memphis is interesting. I mean, they're kind of on an island in the American where they feel like they've got the best football basketball combination. So they're attractive. They're one of the few group of 6 schools that have value. Like when you look across the group of 6, you go, okay, who has the value? UNLV's got some value. Memphis has some value. Of course, Boise State, San Diego State had value. That's why the Pac-12 grabbed them. So they're attractive. They're attractive to the Big East. They're attractive to the Pac-12. They're attractive to the American. So they've got leverage and they're using it right now. I did speak with some people at Memphis, and I spoke with others across the American Athletic Conference. Memphis is talking with the Pac-12. It's one of the entities that they're talking with, and they're listening to the Pac-12. And that was the quote that I published a few days ago that got everybody's attention. Memphis is listening. Because it's one thing to have a conversation where they're going, yeah, we all know that. You have a conversation with your teenager and they're not paying attention to you. But there's another conversation where you're like engaged and they're listening to you. And so the Pac-12 is looking right now, Puck, for a football only edition. They're concerned about football scheduling. Sorry. So the Pac-12 is trying to get another member so that the scheduling can not include having, 5 non-conference games and you have to buy that extra football game. If you have 8 football playing members, you only are playing 7 games. You got a little bit of an imbalance in your schedule. So they'd love to add at least one more football playing school. Memphis fits the bill there because there's a real allergy to include all of these sports at Memphis with travel. And so could you get them in a football only capacity? And that's what the Pac-12, a few of the schools in the Pac-12 really would love to have Memphis in the fold. Now, Memphis then would have to take, if football is not going to play in the American, the other sports can't play in the American, they'd have to take their other sports and maybe go to the Big East. There's a question on whether or not that pencils out financially for Memphis. I also am told that Memphis is looking for a low risk or a no risk proposition. And so does the Pac-12 fit that bill if you're Memphis, or is it a lateral move or maybe just a slightly elevated move to go to the Pac-12 in football and then play the rest of your sports in the Big East? I think ideally Memphis would love to be in the Big 12. I think they're also talked with the Big 12 and Brett Yormark. I'm not convinced that there's a serious transition there unless Memphis does what SMU did and buys their way into a conference. SMU bought their way into the ACC. Memphis may have some appetite with that with some of their donors. So I think right now there's a lot of eyes on Memphis. They're getting a larger than normal distribution in the American. They know if they win that conference, they're going to get, and they make the NCAA tournament, they're going to get, lopsided revenue distribution. Tim Pernetti, very good commissioner in the American. He's on top of this. Obviously, he held off the Pac-12 the first time around. But I do think Memphis is in play, Puck, and from a football-only capacity, the Pac-12, I think, would love to have the Tigers in the fold and say, hey, we're clearly now, there's no argument. We're clearly the 5th best conference or top 5 conferences they're positioning it.
You and John Wilner had Teresa Gould on your latest podcast, which we can find anywhere. You can find it on YouTube and all podcast platforms, Canzano and Wilner podcast. What was your takeaway from her? Could you sense that what direction they want to head in maybe with that, and anything else that's going on with the Mountain West and where they're at right now in the state of the conference after speaking with her?
Yeah, there was a comfort and a calm with Teresa that I had not seen maybe since she took over as commissioner. When she first came into the league, I think, if she's being honest, there was some question on, could they punch their way out of this? Would they win the settlement? Would they get a favorable outcome in court? Could they put together a football schedule for 24 and 25? There were a lot of questions. And I think part of the interesting part of this is that, Teresa Gould's contract with the Pac-12 as commissioner, it was a 2-year deal. It ended when the grace period with Washington State and Oregon State trying to assemble 2 teams on July 1, 2026. That's when her contract expires. So it was a short-term, let's go in and salvage this thing job. And now, I do expect that they're going to talk now with the new teams about extending her and her being the leader, because now there's just a real comfort. She said she's finally sleeping. She looked rested. She looked calm. They're in this odd position, Puck, where they have pivoted from maybe being a little nervous about their future to talking like, hey, they're in control now and they've got options in front of them and they don't have to do anything out of desperation or survival at this point. Now it's about making the best choice. And for people who have been maybe, in a situation where you're living paycheck to paycheck, the Pac-12 now knows it doesn't have to do that.
Yeah. It was, I watched it this morning, listened to it. I thought she was good. She was very good. She wouldn't answer any of your questions. That's what I appreciated about her. And when you and Wilner tried to press her on it, she's like, no, I'm not going to answer that. Yeah. You know what? You go talk to somebody else.
Yeah. And I did. I talked, I tried to press her.
Gave you the Heisman a couple times.
Is Texas State getting a full distribution? Yeah. Now, I know they're not getting a full distribution, but we need someone to say that on the record, right? I know that the Pac-12 presidents were negotiating with Texas State in the days before they joined, and they were pretty firm in their position that Texas State was not getting a full revenue share. That, in fact, they were looking over at the Sun Belt, and they were going, hey, whatever you're getting in the Sun Belt, we'll give you a little more than that, or we'll give you that in the early years, and then we'll escalate you towards a full membership share by the end of the deal. Now, I talked with Kelly Damphus, the Texas State president. I just published that interview a minute before the show here. I just got that online. I asked him the same thing. Half a bowl of soup, full bowl of soup. He said, he downplayed it, Puck. You love this. And he said, look, it wasn't about that. We don't talk about revenue. It's going to come out that they're like at a half share.
Sure.
But what he said was important to Texas State was access to the playoff, being in a top 5 conference. And he said, and this was the golden quote, he said that they wouldn't have taken less money than they were getting in the Sun Belt. So it tells me that they're coming in at like a half distribution in the early years of this deal and scaling it up. And for Texas State, their travel becomes less demanding going to the Pac-12. Their athletic director, Don Coryell, I talked with him. He said, we don't have to take bus rides anymore because they were flying in and they were busing to James Madison. They were busing to Appalachian State, after flying into a nearby city. And he said, look, you're going to Spokane and busing into Pullman or whatever, but he goes, you're going a lot more direct flights in the Pac-12 for Texas State.
Hey, speaking of things that you recently wrote, and again, that is up there right now. It just dropped in my mailbox. See, when you're a subscriber to John Canzano, johncanzano.com, and the Bald Faced Truth, the stories come. You don't have to do anything.
You don't have to look for it. I
look for it. I just received it.
Yeah,
like 10 minutes ago. It's right there. Texas State President 80 sound off on the Pac-12. Now, right when I read that initial headline, I'm like, oh Jesus, did we already piss them off? Like, did we already do something? No, but it's just you sitting down with both the president and AD talking about their move to the Pac-12. You also wrote a story, and I read it this morning, and it's just, it's why I love reading you is because you can cover the Texas State situation. You can write about that, and then you have a commentary, and then you write these human interest stories that I love. This latest one on Lucy Reed, who was a longtime Oregon State fan, 96 years of age. And what I took away from the piece, and, we all will take away something different from it, is, and I wanted to ask you this, is what did you learn from her? And what do you think we should take away kind of from her perspective? I love what she said there kind of at the end to you when you talked to her, where she was like, I enjoyed every second, every minute of my life. And not everybody does.
Yeah.
But boy, it sure really did sound like she did.
She knew she was dying, and you and I talked about this, and she knew she had a matter of days left when I talked with her. I talked with her twice. I talked with her over the weekend, and then I talked to her on a Sunday afternoon. She died on a Monday. So, her whole thing was, you've got this vantage point as a sports fan. She's a 70-year season ticket holder. Like, I can't even wrap my head around that kind of commitment as a fan. 70 years. She was there for Oregon State as a football, baseball, basketball fan. I saw her numerous times, never spoke with her. And when I ultimately met her, I was like, oh, I've seen you all over the place. Like, you're just one of those people you always walk by in the crowd. But it got me thinking about the vantage point. Like, as fans and media, we are often sitting back looking toward the field. And we don't sometimes maybe look back at the regular folks who are in the stands and in the stadium. And we got a taste of that, Puck, when the pandemic hit and we had cardboard cutouts in the stadiums and the fan atmosphere was gone and they tried to pipe in the sound. It wasn't the same. The atmosphere wasn't the same. The venues weren't the same. The experience wasn't the same without the fans there sort of being excited and being into it, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, all of that. So I just think it's a good reminder, to, as much time and effort and energy as we spend looking out onto the field or onto the court. I had coaches, I've had players over the years say that they sometimes will look into the crowd and they'll see a kid in the crowd and they'll be like, oh, that was me when I was younger. Or they'll see an older person in the crowd and go, hey, my grandparents used to take me to games. I think it's just a good reminder to us that that vantage point and that perspective is everything. And I drew the comparison, I'm an English literature major, and one of my favorite writers, Henry David Thoreau, he did this thing where he went out into the wilderness and then wrote about civilization.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
As I was writing this, I was thinking, gosh, that's such a great thing. To go out into the crowd and write about sports is sometimes the perspective and the vantage point we need. And she died surrounded by her family, and she grew up dirt poor and made a good life for herself. But I like telling the stories of regular people as much as I like writing about athletes and coaches.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I just loved it. On the day that she ended up passing away, I want to give away all of the story. I want people to go read it. Is that she grew up in the Depression era. She grew up with, they were on a farm where they grew up with chickens and eggs, and she loved making eggs for breakfast, and that's what she did that morning.
Her last morning,
yeah,
dragged herself to the kitchen.
Yeah.
Her kids said they woke up like at 4:30 in the morning, and they smelled this familiar smell in the house, and it was their mother, who's on her deathbed, who had taken herself from her hospice bed into the kitchen and to make eggs and potatoes. And, think about that, the power of that. Profound.
Yeah. And you talked about just, looking in the crowd and athletes seeing, the kids that used to be them, athletes, kids look up to athletes all the time. We've got a player, and I haven't touched on this story because it saddens me in a way. It really does. It not so much bothers me. It doesn't anger me. It just saddens me because, I think as far as we have a society and a culture have made so many improvements in how we treat each other, how we respect each other, how we look at each other, and we're all different. We look different. We sound different. We're from different backgrounds. We just, we come back and I don't think we've learned anything at all. And we just, the racial divide in this country, to me, when I was growing up in junior high and high school, I thought, it was the diversity, at least where I went to school, was so profound. And it was, and still to this day. And I just met with some friends yesterday, and we're just so diverse in the backgrounds, and thinking to myself, God, we got our issues and we have our problems, but God, when, I would think that when I have kids, but it's going to be so much better. And I think back and I go, it was better back then than it is now. It's like worse now. And leads me to this, little girls looking up to athletes. This Caitlin Clark story, and I haven't brought it up, and I wanted to specifically bring it up with you. I wanted to do it last week. It saddens me because we have it falls on racial lines. It falls on supreme jealousy. We have a group of athletes in a sport that is so mad at her for being good and probably being white and the attention that she receives. And so they decided to just send a message to her. We don't think you're that good, so we're going to vote you 9th among, I think it was guards, or 9th among all players, whereas the fans voted her number 1.
Guard. She was the number 9 guard.
Number 9th guard. Yeah. It's the best player in the league. Yeah. And I don't know. I would look at these athletes in that league and go, what? Do you realize what she's done for you? Yeah. Do you understand how she has risen this entire league? These things that you've been fighting for, which you deserve, didn't happen until she came into the league. And I'm not saying you need to bow down to her and kiss her feet, and I'm not saying that she's perfect, because no one's perfect. I don't know. It saddens me that it's always just turned into a racial topic with her every single time. And I don't know. Like 2025, I thought we'd be better than that.
It's petty. It's petty at its core. Here's the thing too. Like, every team in that league knows that the best crowds in the league, the ratings are being delivered in that league, the chartered airplanes that they got in the league, the collective bargaining that is happening is all being fueled by the popularity of a sport that she is helping largely drive by moving from college to the pro game. The expansion boom that the WNBA is having. Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA, knows that if there's no Caitlin Clark and there's no ratings, that you don't have expansion franchises falling over themselves to try to join. They are growing at a pace that I think is a little alarming and scares me a little bit. I don't know if they have the depth to grow the way they're growing. They don't have enough Caitlin Clarks in this league yet. But for the players in that league to vote her 9th among guards is petty. And they're going to justify it. The people who are downgraded her, they're going to justify it by saying, hey, she's not shooting at a high percentage from 3-point range. And that's fine, because every team in the league is geared to stopping her, and we're not going to give her an open 3. That's fine. Like, maybe she's not having the success shooting the ball from 3 that she did last season, but she is the most popular player in the game and had more fan votes by herself than all of the players in the league combined last year. Like that, she had more fan votes herself this year for the All-Star team. So you can't keep her out of this game. So they were sending a message. The players in the league were sending a message saying, we don't like you. We don't like the attention you're getting. And she strikes a lot of nerve because players in the league who for a long time competed and worked and played hard and maybe didn't get compensated in the way they felt like they deserved or didn't get noticed in the way they deserved are now pushing back saying, hey, wait a minute, you need to pay your dues. We're not going to give you the attention that you deserve. It is petty. It is ridiculous. It would be the same as the golfers on the PGA Tour looking over at Tiger Woods and saying, oh, we're not comfortable with you coming in here. Never mind that Buick wants to triple the purse for the Buick Open because Tiger's part of the event. The golfers on the tour embraced it, patted him on the back, gave him a ride to the course because 100%. Of what he did for the game.
100%.
And so the WNBA players who are pushing back against Caitlin Clark don't get it. And if they want to go back to a time and a place where you and I didn't talk about the WNBA, where nobody showed up to the games, where the TV ratings were bad, and where they had to take commercial flights, that's on them. But she is the most popular player in the game and the biggest draw in the game. And for the players in that league not to recognize it and be like, hey, she should be starting in this All-Star game is petty.
Well said. You go read all of his work, johncanzano.com. Bald-Faced Truth is the radio program down there in Portland, Oregon. He joins us here every single Tuesday. Follow him on social media too, John Canzano BFT. You do it all. You are a one-man band. All right. Thank you, sir. We'll chat with you next week.
Talk to you.
There he is, John Canzano. Again, read all of his work, johncanzano.com. Listen to the radio show at John Canzano BFT. That was